हेलो एवरीवन, वेलकम टू द लाइव सेशन। तो लास्ट क्लास हम देख रहे थे एनसीईआरटी ज्योग्राफी क्लास 11 का चैप्टर 7। तो उसी को आज हम कंटिन्यू करेंगे। तो शुरू करते हैं। डिपोजिशनल लैंडफॉर्म्स, द assorted coarse and fine debris dropped by the melting glaciers is called glacial till. Most of the rock fragments in the till are angular to subangular in form. Streams formed by melting ice at the bottom, sides, or lower ends of glaciers. Some amount of rock debris, small enough to be carried by such melting water streams, is washed down and deposited. Such glacial fluvial deposits are called outwash deposits. Unlike till deposits, the outwash deposits are roughly stratified and assorted. The rock fragments in outwash deposits are somewhat rounded at their edges. Figure shows a few depositional landforms commonly found in glacial areas. Moraines. They are long ridges of deposits of glacial till. Terminal moraines are long regions of debris deposited at the end toe of the glacier. Lateral moraines form along the sides parallel to the glacial valleys. The lateral moraines may join a terminal moraine, forming a horseshoe-shaped ridge. There can be many lateral moraines on either side in a glacial valley. These moraines partly or fully owe their origin to glaciofluvial waters pushing up materials to the sides of glaciers. Many valley glaciers retreating rapidly leave an irregular sheet of till over their valley floors. Such deposits vary greatly in thickness and in surface topography are called ground moraines. The moraine in the center of the glacial valley flanked by lateral moraine is called medial moraine. They are imperfectly formed as compared to lateral moraines. Sometimes medial moraines are indistinguishable from ground moraines. Eskers. When glaciers melt in summer, the water flows on the surface of the ice or seeps down along the margins or even moves through holes in the ice. These water accumulate beneath the glacier and flow like streams in a channel beneath the ice. Such stream flows over the ground, not in valley, cut in the ground, with ice forming its banks. Very coarse materials like boulders and blocks, along with some minor fractions of rock debris carried into the stream, settle in the valley of ice beneath the glacier, and after the ice melts can be found as a sinuous ridge called esker. Outwash plains. The plains at the foot of the glacial mountains or beyond the limits of continental ice sheets are covered with glaciofluvial deposits in the form of broad flat alluvial veins, which may join to form outwash plains of gravel, silt, and sand and clay. Distinguish between river alluvial plains and glacial outwash plains. Drumlins. Drumlins are smooth, oval-shaped ridge-like features composed mainly of glacial till with some masses of gravel and sand. The long axes of drumlins are parallel to the direction of ice movement. They may measure up to 1 kilometer in length and 30 meter or so in height. One end of the drumlins facing the glacier, called the stoss end, is blunter and steeper than the other end, called tail. The drumlins form due to dumping of rock debris beneath heavily loaded ice through fissures in the glacier. The stoss end gets blunted due to pushing by moving ice. Drumlins gives an indication of direction of glacier movements. What is the difference between till and alluvium? Waves and current. Coastal processes are the most dynamic and hence most destructive. So, don't you think it is important to know about the coastal processes and forms? Some of the changes along the coast take place very fast. At one place, there can be erosion in one season and deposition in another. Most of the changes along the coast are accomplished by waves. When waves break, the water is thrown with great force onto the shore, and simultaneously there is a great churning of sediments on the sea bottom. Constant impact of breaking waves drastically affects the coast. Storm waves and tsunami waves can cause far reaching changes in a short period of time than normal breaking waves. As wave environment changes, the intensity of the force of breaking wave changes. Do you know about the generating forces behind waves and currents? If not, refer to the chapter Movements in Ocean Waters. Other than the action of waves, the coastal landforms depend upon the configuration of land and sea floor, whether the coast is advancing, emerging seaward, or retreating, submerging landward. Assuming sea level to be constant, two types of coast are considered to explain the concept of evolution of coastal landforms. High rocky coast, submerged coast, low, smooth, and gently sloping sedimentary coast, or immersed coasts. High rocky coasts. Along the high rocky coast, the river appeared to have been drowned with highly irregular coastline. The coastline appears highly indented with extension of water into the land where glacial valleys are present. The hillsides drop off sharply into the water. Shores do not show any depositional landforms initially. Erosion features dominant. Along high rocky coast, waves break with great force against the land, shaping the hillsides into cliffs. With constant pounding by waves, the cliffs recede by leaving a wave-cut platform in front of the sea cliff. Waves gradually minimize the irregularities along the shore. The materials which fall off and removed from the sea cliffs gradually break into smaller fragments and roll to roundness will get deposited in the offshore. After a considerable period of cliff development and retreat, when coastline turns somewhat smooth with the addition of some more material to this deposit in the offshore, a wave-built terrace would develop in front of wave-cut terrace. As the erosion along the coast takes place, a good supply material becomes available to longshore currents and waves to deposit them as beaches along the shores and as bars or long regions of sand and or single parallel to the coast in the near shore zones. Bars are submerged features, and when bars show up above water, they are called barrier bars. Barrier bar which get keyed up to the headland of a bay is called a spit. When barrier bars and spits form at the mouth of a bay and block it, a lagoon forms. The lagoons would gradually get filled up by sediments from the land, giving rise to a coastal plain. Low sedimentary coast. Along low sedimentary coast, the rivers appears to extend their length by building coastal plains and deltas. The coastline appears smooth with occasional incursions of water in the form of lagoons and tidal creeks. The land slopes gently into the water. Marshes and swamps may abound along the coast. Depositional features dominate. When waves break over a gently sloping sedimentary coast, the bottom sediment gets churned and move readily, building bars, barrier bars, pits, and lagoons. Lagoons would eventually turn into a swamp, which would subsequently turn into a coastal plain. The maintenance of these depositional features depends upon the steady supply of materials. Storm and tsunami waves cause drastic changes irrespective of supply of sediments. Large rivers which bring lot of sediments build deltas along low sedimentary coast. The west coast of our country is a high, rocky retreating coast. Erosional forms dominate in west coast. The east coast of India is a low sedimentary coast. Depositional forms dominate in the east coast. What are the various differences between a high rocky coast and a low sedimentary coast in terms of processes and landforms? Erosional landforms: cliffs, terraces, caves, and stakes. Wave-cut cliffs and terraces are two forms usually found where erosion is the dominant source process. Almost all sea cliffs are steep and may range from a few meters to 30 meters or even more. At the foot of such cliffs, there may be a flat or gently sloping platform covered by rock debris derived from the sea cliff behind. Such platforms occurring at elevation above the average height of waves is called a wave-cut terrace. The lacing of waves against the base of the cliff and the rock debris that gets smashed against the cliff along with lacing waves create hollows, and these hollows get widened and deepen to form a sea caves. The roofs of caves collapse and the sea cliffs recede further inland. Retreat of the cliff may leave some remnants of rock standing isolated as small islands just off the shore. Such resistant masses of rocks, originally part of a cliff or hill, are called sea stacks. Like all other features, sea stacks are also temporary and eventually coastal hills and cliffs will disappear because of wave erosion, giving rise to narrow coastal plains and with unrush of deposits from over the land behind may get covered up by alluvium or may get covered up by shingle or sand to form a wide beach. Depositional landforms, beaches and dunes. Beaches are characteristic of shorelines that are dominated by deposition but may occur as patches along even the rugged shores. Most of the sediment making of the beaches comes from land carried by the streams and rivers or from wave erosion. Beaches are temporary features. The sandy beach, which appears so permanent, may be reduced to a very narrow strip of coarse pebbles in some other season. Most of the beaches are made up of sand-sized materials. Beaches called single beaches contain excessively small pebbles and even cobbles. Just behind the beach, the sands lifted and winnowed from over the beach surfaces will be deposited as sand dunes. Sand dunes forming long ridges parallel to the coastline are very common along low sedimentary coast. Bars, barriers, and spits. A ridge of sand and shingle found in sea in the offshore zone from the position of low tide water line to seaward, lying approximately parallel to the coast, is called an offshore bar. An offshore bar which is exposed due to further addition of sand is termed as barrier bar. The offshore bars and barriers commonly form across the mouth of a river or at the entrance of a bay. Sometimes such barrier bars get keyed up to one end of the bay when they are called spits. Spits may also develop attached to headlands or hills. The barriers, bars, and spits at the mouth of the bay gradually extend, leaving only a small opening of the bay into the sea, and the bay will eventually develop into a lagoon. The lagoons get filled up gradually by sediment coming from the land or from the beach itself, added by wind, and a broad and wide coastal plain may develop, replacing a lagoon. Do you know the coastal offshore bars offer the first buffer or defense against storm or tsunami by absorbing most of the destructive force? Then come the barrier beaches, beach dunes, and mangroves. If any to absorb the destructive force of storm and tsunami waves. So, if we do anything which disrupts the sediment budget and the mangroves along the coast, these coastal forms will get eroded away, leaving human habitations to bear first strike of storm and tsunami waves. Winds. Wind is one of the two dominant edges in hot desert. The desert floors get heated up too much and too quickly because of being dry and barren. The heated floors heat up the air directly above them and results in upward movement in hot lighter air with turbulence, and any obstructions in its path sets up eddies, whirlwinds, updrafts and downdrafts. Winds also move along the desert floor with great speed, and the obstructions in their path create turbulence. Of course, there are storm winds which are very destructive. Winds causes deflation, abrasion and impact. Deflation includes lifting and removal of dust and smaller particles from the surface of rocks. In the transportation process, sand and silt act as effective tools to absorb the land surface. The impact is simply sheer process of momentum which occurs when sand is blown into or against a rock surface. It is similar to sand blasting operation. The wind action creates a depositional features in the deserts. In fact, many features of deserts owe their formation to mass wasting and running water as seed floors. Though rain is scarce in deserts, it comes down torrentially in a short period of time. The desert rocks devoid of vegetation, exposed to mechanical and chemical weathering processes due to drastic diurnal temperature changes, decay faster, and the torrential rain help in removing the weathered materials easily. That means the weather debris in desert is moved by not only wind but also by rain or sea waves. The wind moves fine materials and general mass erosion is accomplished mainly through seed flood or seed wash. Stream channels in desert areas are broad, smooth, and indefinite and flow for a brief time after rains. Erosional landforms, pediments and pediplains. Landscape evolution in desert is primarily concerned with the formation and extension of pediments. Gently inclined rocky floors close to the mountains at their foot with or without a thin cover of debris are called pediments. Such rocky floors form through the erosion of mountains formed through a combination of lateral erosion by streams and seed flooding. Erosion starts along the steep margins of the landmass or the steep sides of the tectonical control steep incision features over the landmass. Once pediments are formed with steep first slope followed by cliff or free face above it, the steep was slope and free face retreat backwards. This method of erosion is termed as parallel retreat of slopes through backwashing. So, through parallel retreat of slopes, the pediments extend backwards at the expense of mountain's front, and gradually the mountains gets reduced, leaving an inselberg, which is a remnant of the mountain. That's how the high relief in desert areas is reduced to low featureless plains called pediplains. Plains. Plains are by far the most prominent landforms in the desert. In basins with mountains and hills around and along the drainage is towards the center of the basin, and due to gradual deposition of sediment from basin margins, a nearly level plain forms at the center of the basin. In times of sufficient water, this plain is covered up by a shallow water body. Such type of shallow lakes are called as playas, where water is retained only for short duration due to evaporation, and quite often the playas contain good deposition of salt. The playa plain covered up by salts is called alkali flats. Deflation, hollows and caves. Weathered mantle from over the rocks or bare soil gets blown out by persistent movement of wind currents in one direction. This process may create shallow depressions called hollows. Deflation also creates numerous small pits or cavities over rock surfaces. The rock faces suffer impact and abrasion of wind-borne sand, and fast shallow depressions called blowouts are created, and some of the blowouts become deeper and wider pit to be called caves. Mushroom, table and pedestal rocks. Many rock outcrops in desert, easily susceptible to wind deflation and abrasion, are worn out quickly, leaving some remnants of resistant rocks polished beautifully in the shape of mushroom, with a slender stalk and a broad and rounded pear-shaped cape above. Sometimes the top surface is broad like a tabletop, and quite often the remnants stand out like pedestals. List the erosional features carved out by wind action and action of sheet floods. Depositional landform. Wind is a good sorting agent. Depending upon the velocity of wind, different sizes of grains are moved along the floors by rolling or saltation and carried in suspension. And in this process of transportation itself, the materials get sorted. When the wind slows or begins to die down, depending upon sizes of grains and their critical velocities, the grain will begin to settle. So, in depositional landforms made by wind, good sorting of grains can be found. Since wind is there everywhere and wherever there is good source of sand, and with constant wind directions, depositional features in arid regions can develop anywhere. Sand dunes. Dry, hot deserts are good places for sand dunes formation. Obstacles to initiate dune formation are equally important. There can be a great variety of dune forms. Crescent-shaped dunes called barkens with the points or wings directed away from wind direction, that means downward from form, where the wind direction is constant and moderate, and where the original surface over which sand is moving is almost uniform. Parabolic dunes form when sandy surfaces are partially covered with vegetation. That means parabolic dunes are reversed barkens with wind direction being the same. A shape is similar to barken with a small difference. Shape has only one wing or point. This happens when there is a shift in wind conditions. The lone wings of shapes can grow very long and high. Longitudinal dunes form when supply of sand is poor and wind direction is constant. They appear as long ridges of considerable length but low in height. Transverse dunes are aligned perpendicular to wind direction. These dunes form when the wind direction is constant and the source of sand is an elongated feature at the right angle to the wind direction. They may be very long and low in height. When sand is plenty, quite often the regular shaped dunes colsic and lose their individual characteristic. Most of the dunes in the desert shift and a few of them will get stabilized, especially near human habitation. तो ये था आज का चैप्टर, ये है इसका एक्सरसाइज, आप चाहे तो ये कर सकते हैं. तो आज के लिए इतना ही. थैंक यू, थैंक्स फॉर ज्वाइनिंग.